The global economic landscape is shifting rapidly, with new alliances and rivalries shaping the future of international trade. At the heart of this transformation are the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, who are now taking center stage in global affairs. For decades, the US dollar dominated world trade, acting as the backbone of the global financial system and giving America unparalleled influence. But that order now faces its toughest challenge yet, a wave of aggressive tariffs and protectionist policies that threaten to upend the status quo. In September 2025, the BRICS nations imposed sweeping retaliatory tariffs on the US, sending shockwaves through the global economy. This bold move was a direct response to years of escalating American trade barriers and mounting economic pressure. This isn't just a trade spat, it's a battle for economic sovereignty, global influence, and the creation of a truly multipolar world order. US tariffs on Chinese goods have soared to an unprecedented 145%, making it nearly impossible for many Chinese products to compete in the American market. Meanwhile, India and Brazil are now facing 50% duties, uniting the BRICS nations in strong opposition and forging a new sense of solidarity. The result, a global tariff war that threatens to disrupt supply chains, put millions of American jobs at risk, and undermine US economic leadership on the world stage. In this new era, we'll explore the immediate fallout for US exports, the accelerating trend of de-dollarization, and the shifting balance of power. Even America's closest allies are being forced to reconsider their loyalties as the global economic order is thrown into uncertainty. As the US faces mounting backlash both at home and abroad, the very rules of global trade are being rewritten before our eyes. The world is watching closely as a new economic order emerges, one that could redefine prosperity and power for generations to come. In a stunning move, BRICS announced a 100% tariff on select American goods, a calculated response to US trade aggression. The targeted list hit US agricultural exports like soybeans and pork, crippling Midwest farmers and key political constituencies. American-made cars and high-tech goods were also singled out, striking at the heart of US industry. BRICS justified their actions as necessary self-defense, mirroring US tactics and demanding fair negotiations. The timing was brutal. China halted all US soybean purchases at the start of export season, leaving American farmers with unsellable surpluses. The tariffs severed long-standing trade ties, proving BRICS could find alternatives to US goods. The economic battlefield was set. BRICS had fired the opening shots of a coordinated counteroffensive. The US now faced a crisis it could no longer ignore. The BRICS tariffs hit American exporters hard, sending shockwaves through industries that depend on global markets to survive. Overnight, US products became unaffordable abroad. American goods, once staples on foreign shelves, were suddenly out of reach for millions of consumers. Orders for cars, machinery, and farm goods from BRICS countries vanished, slashing export revenues and triggering layoffs. Factories that once hummed with activity fell silent, and workers faced an uncertain future. The pain rippled through supply chains, affecting not just manufacturers, but also the countless suppliers and logistics companies that keep American industry moving. Factories cut shifts, suppliers lost contracts, and small businesses faced closure. The impact was felt from the largest corporations to the smallest family-run shops. American farmers, once reliant on China and India, found their harvests unsellable and prices crashing. Crops rotted in fields, and the promise of a good season evaporated. Many faced bankruptcy as silos filled with grain and debts mounted. Years of hard work and investment were suddenly at risk. The tariffs didn't just hurt big corporations, they devastated entire communities. Towns built around a single industry saw their lifeblood dry up almost overnight. The trade war's human cost was clear, as families struggled to pay bills and communities rallied to support their neighbors. Lost jobs, shuttered businesses, and financial despair across the heartland. The sense of security that once defined these towns was gone. What began as a policy in Washington ended as a crisis in Ohio, Michigan, and beyond. The effects rippled far beyond the negotiating table. The ripple effects of global trade policy were now painfully local, touching every corner of the country and every walk of life. The US economy was bleeding from self-inflicted wounds as the consequences of the trade war became impossible to ignore. The question, how much more could it take, and what would it take to turn things around for American workers and businesses? BRICS aren't just fighting tariffs, they're building a new financial system, the gold trade without the US dollar. Over 90% of Russia-China trade now uses rubles and yuan, bypassing the dollar entirely. India and Brazil are following suit, settling deals in local currencies. BRICS are expanding their own payment networks, sidestepping Western-controlled systems like SWIFT. Their new development bank is issuing loans in local currencies, embedding this new model. Shared economic pressure has turned BRICS into strategic allies, united against US dominance. This isn't just about trade, it's a geopolitical realignment. De-dollarization has moved from theory to reality. BRICS and others are cutting their reliance on the dollar for trade and reserves. Instead of routing payments through New York, countries are settling directly in local currencies or yuan. The motivation: shield themselves from US sanctions and financial coercion. Central banks are dumping US Treasury bonds and buying gold, a neutral asset immune to US policy. This shift signals a loss of confidence in the dollar's neutrality and long-term stability. The world is building alternatives to America's financial grip. The dollar's exorbitant privilege is under threat. The global financial order is being rewritten. US tariffs haven't just angered rivals, they've cornered allies. Japan was forced into a $550 billion US investment deal, with Washington controlling the profits, sparking political upheaval at home. South Korea faces similar pressure, risking financial crisis unless the US offers currency support. The EU too is under threat, with heavy tariffs and demands for massive US investments. Allies are being forced to choose, accept damaging tariffs, or sign away capital in lopsided deals. Decades of trust are eroding as America's partners question its reliability. Even allies are now exploring greater economic independence. The US-led order is fracturing from within. The administration's tariffs were meant to revive US industry, but the reality is far grimmer. Automakers face soaring costs and lost export markets, while tech firms struggle with labor shortages due to new visa restrictions. Anti-immigrant policies have disrupted factory operations, deterring foreign investment. Farmers, devastated by lost markets, now rely on government bailouts funded by the very tariffs that hurt them. The cycle is self-defeating. Tariffs cause retaliation, which triggers bailouts, but the underlying problems remain. The US economy is showing deep cracks. Policy contradictions are undermining growth and stability. The pain is spreading from factories to farms to entire communities. America's economic wounds are increasingly self-inflicted. Confronted by BRICS retaliation and mounting domestic turmoil, Washington projects an image of defiance to the world, determined to maintain its position on the global stage. Yet behind closed doors, officials scramble for solutions, urgently debating strategies to contain the fallout and restore stability. Emergency bailouts for farmers and struggling industries offer some short-term relief, aiming to cushion the blow for those hit hardest by the crisis. But these measures can't restore lost export markets or address the deeper structural problems now exposed in the economy. The political debate grows increasingly polarized. Some leaders double down on protectionism, while others call for renewed global engagement. Business leaders warn of rising costs, job losses, and the risk of alienating key allies. Wall Street remains buoyant, driven by speculation, but Main Street continues to suffer. A disconnect that fuels growing confusion, anxiety, and frustration among ordinary Americans. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is moving on, forming new alliances, forging fresh trade routes, and adapting to a shifting landscape. De-dollarization is no longer just a threat. It's rapidly becoming a reality as countries diversify their reserves and payment systems. Trust in US leadership is eroding, with allies and rivals alike questioning America's reliability and long-term vision. Even if trade disputes eventually ease, the damage to America's global standing and influence has already been done. Countries are diversifying partnerships, seeking stability elsewhere, and growing wary of US unpredictability in international affairs. The dollar's reign as the world's reserve currency isn't over yet, but its authority is clearly fading, challenged by new competitors and shifting global priorities. The global economic order is entering a new, uncertain era, one where old assumptions no longer hold and the future remains unpredictable. The world is no longer waiting for America to lead, forging ahead into a future shaped by new powers and shifting alliances.